I'm in the northwest of the city, in Kirkstall. Now, Kirkstall is best known for the ruins of this grand Cistercian abbey built here on the north bank of the River Aire. Now, like so many historical stories of Leeds, this one starts with a member of the de Lacy family. They were massive landowners across the north of England, and in this case it's Henry de Lacy who was the 4th Baron of Pontefract. Henry fell ill, and he vowed that if he recovered he would establish a monastery and dedicate it to St Mary. Well, he recovered and he donated land to establish a daughter monastery to Fountains Abbey at Barron Oldswick on the Yorkshire-Lancashire border. But the monks were not successful. Their crops failed, bandits stole their possessions, and the locals were not happy about them being there. Abbot Alexander, who ran the community, was looking for a new home. Now, it's said that he was out on business one day and he came across a valley which he described as woody and shadowy, and that was right here in Kirkstall. Now, there wasn't much here except an awful lot of trees, some stone and a river. And the land didn't belong to de Lacy, but he persuaded the landowner to give it to the monks, and he was instrumental in establishing the monastery here, which was started to be built in 1152, with most of the construction finished over the next 30 years. Monks would join the monastery by taking a vow that they would give up their worldly goods, devoting their lives to God and to discipline. Other vows covered poverty, chastity, and obedience. They would spend their days praying, meditating, and reading the Bible, and then doing chores around the place, such as washing, cooking, and repairs. The monasteries also served as early hotels because there weren't that many other places to stay. And the monks were involved with helping the poor and the sick, and were also involved with the education of young people. And so it went on for about 400 years, until King Henry VIII wanted to divorce his first wife, Catherine of Aragon. Now, England at the time was a Catholic country, and the Pope, who was head of the church, refused to allow the divorce. So Henry made himself head of the church, freeing the way for him to marry his new love, Anne Boleyn. But the monks and nuns still thought the Pope was in charge, and so Henry systematically removed all of their institutions and pocketed most of their money in the process. This abbey was handed over to Henry's commissioners in November of 1539. The abbey then passed through many different families, and over time much of the stone was removed for use in other buildings, leaving the ruins we have today. In 1889, the abbey was bought by the fabulously wealthy John North. Now, North was born in Leeds, and he made an absolute fortune by securing monopoly positions in a number of businesses in Chile and in Peru, and he also had extensive mining interests around the UK. The year he bought the abbey, he was said to be worth $10 million. Now, that's more than £200 million in today's money. But when he died after eating some oysters in 1896, his business empire had collapsed, but he still owned the abbey, and he left it to the city of Leeds in his will. Now, since then, it's been open to the public, and it's also the site of the Kirkstall Festival, which has been happening here every year since 1981. This is a 19th century drinking fountain, and its inspiring message, "Drink and be grateful," has a story behind it. Now, the fountain is dated 1865, but in 1849 there was an outbreak of cholera which claimed 2,000 lives in the city.
Now at the time, Kirkstall will have been a village, and its water supplies would have carried the cholera which caused the problem. This fountain was put in order to provide clean and pure drinking water to the people living here. These days it's looked after by Kirkstall in Bloom, a voluntary organisation who keep this and many other places in the area looking beautiful. Kirkstall has many monuments to its historic past. Now this road is the A65, which runs here from the city centre and then on to Horsforth, to Guiseley, Yeadon, Ilkley and Skipton before finishing up at Kendal in Cumbria. Now this magnificent monument shows that it is exactly 200 miles one way to Edinburgh and 200 miles the other way to London. And for those making iron axles in the nearby forge to go onto horse-drawn carriages in the 19th century, it must have really felt that they were right bang in the middle of the country. Kirkstall has been a site of industry in the city since the 12th century, with the milling of corn here for the monks nearby. In fact, this was the longest continuously used industrial site anywhere in the country. Now, in the 16th century, production of iron began with the manufacture of shovels and spades, and then later axles, including those for motorised vehicles. In fact, by the 1930s, almost every bus in the country will have had a Kirkstall-made back axle casing. Now, the forge has since closed down, but this area is part of a real renaissance for the city of Leeds. But the site of the old metalworks is changing, with the 64-acre site being redeveloped. This is the newest railway station in Leeds, with trains regularly running to Ilkley and to Bradford. There's 300,000 square feet of office space under construction, built to eco principles, 100,000 square feet of retail and leisure space coming, and more than 1,000 homes. And this will create more than 2,500 jobs for the city. Kirkstall is a heady mix of the old and the new, with all the history of the Abbey and the pioneering redevelopment of Kirkstall Forge. It's set to be one of the most important suburbs of Leeds for many years to come. This is Jonathan Straight for The Lowdown.